Welcome to Open Up, an advice show from Smashing Conf about navigating the human experience of working as a designer or developer. I'm Brad Frost, and along with my co-host Jeff Graham, we answer listener questions about topics like finding purpose and motivation, navigating unemployment, finding footing in our fast-moving industry, and wrestling with all the other tough aspects of work and life. So share your situation with us and we'll weigh in with helpful perspectives and advice and resources. Now let's dig in and open up. Yeah, we got people trickling in here.
Cool.
Including our very own Jeff Graham.
That's me. Nice.
That's me. It's a me, Jeff.
It's a me.
Well, then I say enjoy, and I watch you two cooking, not cooking, doing the dishes.
Yeah, well, in this house, I do all the dishes.
What do you do? Are you like Mark and just join random live podcast recordings, or do you what do you do, Jeff, whenever you are washing the dishes?
I tend to listen to music. That is my thing. We have, like speakers all throughout the house. You can just say, hey, play this thing. And normally what I tend to do is focus on an artist. Like I don't like to just do a play mix or something like that. Hey, algorithm, feed me stuff that I already like or something. I like getting really deep into a specific artist and being like, hey, just throw me on some deep cuts or throw me on something that I can, really get a sense of who this artist is. And it's just background noise while I'm, scrubbing, grime off the plates.
Smashburger grime, yes. Is it artists that you usually are already a fan of, or are you do you use that time to try to learn about, are you trying to go deeper on artists that you already are familiar with and love, or is it more around oh, I've heard great things about this band or whatever, and I want to see what they're all about?
Yeah, I'd say it's a little bit of both. I'm on a really big kick, and I have been for maybe the last 5 or 7 years of artists that I've heard from in the past, but never really got into. So,
yeah.
So, I mean, classic rock is just full of that stuff, right? Like the 50s, 60s, 70s are just super ripe with the most arcane things that you may have never even heard of that came up, but they're fantastic. There was such a groove, there was such a vibe over there. So even when I'm listening to okay, I know who the band is, but I've never really listened to Levon Helm solo or something.
Yes.
I'd really like to hear something like that. So I'm familiar with who Levon Helm is. I've heard some of his performances, but I don't know him as a person or some of his live recordings. I mean, when he sings The Weight live, it's unbelievable. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
How about you, awesome, man? What do you do around the dishes? Do you actually do activities around it, or try to surround yourself with something, or is it a Zen thing where you're just scrubbing and getting the right amount of grime off?
It's fun. It's funny you say Zen, because it's such a Buddhist thing is it's to really be present in the activity, and to use mundane tasks like washing the dishes as kind of is I feel like their go-to. It's you could wash the dishes and you're washing it with your whole presence and stuff like that, which I think is beautiful. Yeah, go for it.
That reminds me. No, I was totally in Zen mode this last week where I'm working on acoustic guitar. I'm making one, right?
You're making an acoustic guitar.
I'm making one. Yeah. And this thing, I had to sand it. Once I got the bottom and the top on, I had all these braces in here that, kind of fit like Lego pieces, and I have to sand them off and get everything flush and on an edge there. So even though this is treated rosewood and Sitka and whatnot, you still have to go over it and get all the glue off, all the different, like little dings and dents or like little smudges and stuff. And then look, you can get like super flush on there. That's so that it looks
Holy
painted.
smokes.
It looks painted, but that's all embedded in there with like routing. Like down to the millimeter. It's super fascinating. But that's a Zen moment. Where like you're just sanding for like hours. That's what you're doing. Like that's
Yeah.
it. And there's no shortcut.
I mean, that's one that looks beautiful.
Thanks.
Two, that's an amazing way to like blend some of your, passions together. And yeah, like woodworking, there's a reason I feel like why a lot of people in our field get into woodworking, especially people of a certain age. I think that we all like.
Am I showing my hand here?
I mean, you're in really good company, and I've built, I mean, these things behind me, these
I love
weird
those
shelves.
Those are rad.
Sort of built those and some other things as well. And but like you're describing something that's really important and is something that I think what I've really noticed, and this is like a little bit of a commentary on, I feel like the state of our field.
Oh yeah.
There's not a lot of opportunities for entering and staying in flow states.
Yes.
And I think a lot of it I could point to Jira and other sort of tickets and other sort of things. Like there's like a lot of like, I feel like there's been this compartmentalization of work.
Interesting.
In design work and development work and all of that stuff, where not a lot of people are able to enter into that hours long sanding process, or you sort of get lost in something. Or what I'm kind of finding right now, kind of doing all of these different creative projects and sort of working on all these
you
different
are doing
things,
a lot of stuff,
which are like many and wide, but like at the same time, like just for one project, I have to skip around and do a bunch of things. And that's for me, that rhythm, that flow, where I'm like, oh yeah, like 1 second I'm sort of like editing this thing, but then I got to scoot over here and edit this video. And then I got to scoot over here and like bounce out, this illustration for this and upload that into the newsletter and stuff like that. So there's that kind of flow or that rhythm that kind of comes from being able to touch a bunch of things. And then whenever I look out at how our work has been structured for the last like number of years, here's this just really depressing, Kanban board. And there are these rituals like stand-ups and stuff. Like all of that stuff is like, it's like good and good hygiene and whatever. It's good to stay on top of things. It's good to be organized and so on and so forth. But like, I really feel like there's been a lot lost in the sort of like creative act of making digital things as of late in the last decade or so.
I hadn't really thought of it in that context either, in terms of like, well, it's how we structure or define the work too, right? How we scope it. So I mean, two sides there. You could say, well, are we being too granular with certain things and dictating the direction of a project so that exactly which stars you're satelliting around, whatever, or like do you get the like choice to like kind of explore some of that stuff and have some like wiggle room to make connections and to optimize where you need to?
There's no wiggle room. I think that's it. There's no wiggle room anymore for people as individuals, but even for teams to just kind of like, for instance, get on a call together and have a working session where there's not necessarily like there's always like a very explicit agenda, and it's like, let's like march through this like bulleted list and stuff like that. And even that's productive. That's productive. You're making forward progress, but there's really something sterilizing and kind of when we look at the work that kind of comes out the other end and it looks kind of like uninspired, it's like, yeah, like that technically is the thing that we said we are going to build, and we build it, and
It's
we launched
sanitized.
it, and good job. But there really is, there's like that the soul of creative work, which can absolutely be present in digital things, the same as it can be in making a guitar, or making,
Yeah.
you know, a sculpture, or making, you know, a painting, or a song, or anything like that. There is the opportunity to sort of preserve that soul, but it's like, when you look back on the process of making it and getting there, when
Yes.
you are working in a process that is disconnected, that the people are disconnected, that the all of these things are just chopped up to the point where, like, there's no room for serendipity, there's no room for, yeah, just kind of exploration and play. uh it's a pretty damning indictment, I feel like, of the field. But
Totally is.
the good news, like, I think that I'm right. Like, this
No,
is
you're
one of
wrong,
those things
Brad.
where it's like, like, I can only share my own experience, and obviously, like, I'm not reflective of everyone. You know, I'm sure that, like, if you're like working at a startup, and you're, you know, one of four people, you have no choice but to sort of do more things and cover things in more ground. But I do think that when you look at the maturity of even like the technology and stuff in general, it's like, here's this code, it goes through a PR process, these people need to sign off on it, here's like these like stakeholder approve. So a lot of the things that we call like maturity, right, in the
Yeah.
world of digital design and development and stuff, I think has also translated to, you know, becoming more sterile and less human in a lot of ways.
You've probably just been living inside my head the last week and a half or so, whatever. This is just like, you know, what I've been obsessed about for like a little while here, which I just dropped a link in the chat where it's like, I was, you know, I just finished reading Keith Richards' biography, Life, you know, that like
Oh,
long
what a great
sprawling.
book. What an
Oh, it's a
amazing book.
fantastic book. The guy's such a character, right?
He
You know,
really is.
he's full of like little like quotable nuggets of things. And I'm like, gosh, just the way you articulated, I love that. You know, anyway, he articulated a lot that I just, you know, rounded up, you know, in some choice quotes from like a paragraph or two in the book, and I just called it Fighting Technology, because that's really what Keith was talking about in terms of the jam session. And I think what you are describing is
Yeah.
the jam session, and there is no
Yep.
jam session anymore, where like you're making music with the band, you have your
100%.
individual parts, and the process is about recording every detail of every instrument down to its last precise piece, so that there's no bleed into other instruments,
Yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah.
no, it's
Steely
perfectly
Dan. Yeah,
sterile.
Steely
It's
Dan.
perfectly sterile, right? You don't want any pollution, you know, you want a sanitized experience. And
Yeah.
but Keith is like, no, there's something that happens when you mix sound waves and you get this like energy, and you get mistakes, and you get, you know, certain
Yep.
sonic frequencies like you wouldn't get otherwise if you weren't in the same room. We have the same room that we're in, but we're all in these little cubicles within the room, not actually using the big room.
Yes.
You know? And I'm like, this is like web development these days. Like,
Yes.
this is like, we're isolating ourselves, we're siloing things, and then we're coming together around a bigger picture that may or may not, you know, feel like you contributed to the overall piece. You're like, oh, there's my piece, there's my part, not like this is the thing that we created, that like together we created something new that was like a blending of like all of us. Anyway, I could just
no, that's great. I think this is a dynamic, I think, that I don't see talked about in the slightest in the field. So I think it's worth giving air, because like, I think a lot of like what this show is covering is like the human experience of working in this field. And like, no freaking wonder why a lot of people are disillusioned and not feeling the groove, and not feeling like empowered, and not feeling respected, and not feeling, you know, just, it's a lot of people are at this like existential level. There's a lot of different factors that a lot of them we've already talked about, obviously AI and, you know, kind of more macro level things, but it's like, experientially, the day-to-day work in, you know, I just check this out. I just got a notification on LinkedIn
Oh,
that
you're
says,
lucky. I never get any of those.
it said, congratulations, Brad, on 20 years of Brad Frost Web, of working at Brad Frost Web. And I'm like, that's not entirely true, because I started my like formal business, like my LLC,
Yeah.
in 2013. But
Yep.
I I I was like, I didn't just randomly put like a start date for this, but I went back and I was like, oh, it was whenever I first got my like first paying gig as a web
Yeah.
designer and a
Yes.
developer. So I have been getting paid to make websites for 20 years
Isn't
now,
that
which is
rad to think about? It's
wild.
like a wild. It is wild.
Like
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 when did
that's
we become
that's
that
more
old?
than half of the web's life. And kind of like the good half, I guess, but also to this dynamic, I think that like when I started, right, it was like still during like, yeah, like the Flash age, and
Yep.
like people were like figuring
Tables.
things out. Design was still happening in like Photoshop and like all of that stuff. But
Yeah.
there was that whole, still that spirit of invention, and we're figuring it out, and everyone kind of knows that we're still figuring out
Yeah.
that a lot of like the rigidity or the formality or the maturity that we are just kind of talking about wasn't in place yet. And
Yeah.
I think that brought with it this freedom that still exists, but is definitely not practiced as much. And I think that that's like worth articulating, and it's worth
Yeah.
doing something about. And I have many ideas on how to do
Oh,
that.
do you really? Like
Yeah, I have
that's
I have a
no,
whole
that's interesting.
I have a upcoming course called The Lost Art of Web Design.
And that's coming out when? Are you gonna break the barrier and tell people when?
Not it's That's another lesson that I've had, is like these things take as long as they need to take. I like kind of have a lot of things cooking on the
Yeah.
stove at any point in time, and I kind of like opportunistically, like there's a couple like front burner projects, and those ones, like my atomic design course, I am,
Yeah.
kind of prioritizing and getting that out the door.
Absolutely.
We got some like other stuff going on, but as part of this, I've actually been redesigning my own website, which is,
No, is it still gonna be yellow and orange?
oh yeah, yeah, like
Okay,
yeah,
good.
that's not that's hard coded into me, I think. But
Okay, good. I'm glad.
but yeah, but like so like the process. Yeah, I guess I won't give like a spoiler as to like the deadline, simply because I don't know when that's going to be. But what I realized is that I'm like, oh, I'm doing this big project, which is redesigning my own website, which once upon a time, that's just like, oh yeah, this is like your personal playground and you can like do whatever you want. And it's like pretty low stakes. At this point, though, like as of the beginning of this year, it's actually very high stakes, because like I kind of like really set out on my own and became independent. I'm bringing other people on. It's like me and Ian and a
Feel
bunch of other
responsible.
collaborators, and we have like products to sell, and we're like doing things, and I like need this website to do more and different things than what I used to have it do.
You're
And so I'm
counting on
like,
it.
this is a great opportunity to just kind of like share the whole
Yeah.
process, which is like I'm sort of starting at the beginning, and I'm just like literally just kind of like, it's not Twitch, or it's not like
Yeah.
totally like live coding it, but I am recording everything, and I'm
Yeah.
doing like a voiceover like as I'm doing it, which I'm just saying like, okay, like what does my site need to do? Like, what needs
Yeah.
to be on it? How do I prioritize these things? What do I want to do from a visual design or an information
Mhm.
architecture or UX perspective? Like, how do I balance these different things? And kind of like working through that, but then kind of just like we were talking about at the
Yeah.
beginning here, I think like really kind of like flitting between these different things, because it's not like Yes, I have done the discovery phase, or I have
That's
created the
right.
requirements document, and
Check.
now I will move
Ticket
into this
closed.
phase. And instead, it's like I'm trying to like actually sort of demonstrate that like kind of free flowing creative process that involves, on one hand, I'm like, yeah, jumping into a fig jam and like sketching
Yeah.
things out. I'm jumping into code and like building something out. I'm like sort of firing up just a stray code pen just to sort of like play with something else. I'm going over here. I'm opening 17 links of people like why do I always Lynn, who
Lynn, of
redesigns
course.
her site
Oh, every year. Yeah.
every
Lynn
year?
Fisher.
Lynn, what's that? Lynn Fisher.
Lynn
Yeah,
Fisher.
thank you. I was
Yeah.
why was
Lynn
I
and Tonic, man.
Lynn
That
and
is
Tonic?
like
'Cause
here.
that's why I always like tripping over her name. But
I
it's
will
like just
share it.
like kind of
Yeah.
firing up like all of like these inspiration sites and stuff like as I'm working on things. It's like, oh, I really love how this is articulated. Really love how this person does this. Really loves how this person is doing this. And to kind of just fold it into like the stew in kind of real time. And so that's kind of going to be it. And but I think that there's going to be, I'll be kind of like doing that. So that's one aspect of it, is it's just
Yeah.
like kind of like documenting the process. But then I think that there's going to be like a lot of like translation into like, here's how any team can start like reclaiming some
Yeah.
of this magic in their own process as well.
Well,
So
yeah, because it's like I think we all know what the design thinking process is, right? In terms of like, what your steps are, but how does that turn into something tangible? How does it go from like, an exploration, an idea into something that is, like actionable and execute that
yeah,
you can execute on?
I
Yeah, go ahead.
I really
I see
like
that.
it. Sorry, I just looked at Lawrence's great comment
Yeah.
in the chat. He says, I think part of the problem is creativity missing on product teams when design is nice to have and the
Yep.
engineers are critical. And I think that holds true, and the opposite is true, and all of these other things are true. And like
Yeah.
these are all these constructs of like, ah, yeah, like this stuff doesn't matter and this stuff, other stuff does. And we've seen every flavor of that. So it's not always like, oh yeah, design's nice to have, and they're just going to sprinkle a little,
Content's
aesthetic
king.
magic.
We hear all these things.
Yeah, but it comes back to what you're saying with like Keith Richards. It's like when you have a team of creative powerhouses, people are all skilled at their respective roles,
Yeah.
coming together and participating in a process in a collaborative way, a true collaboration versus
Yeah.
this kind of, yeah, pass it down the line Henry Ford assembly line thing. Like if you've ever Carol Kay, who did studio bass player, she's part of like
Oh
the
yeah.
wrecking crew who worked on like
Yeah.
Pet Sounds and all of that
Oh,
stuff.
yeah, with
So like Brian
like
Wilson,
Leon. Yeah.
obvious genius, and like
Totally.
coming in with this vision and stuff. But like she would discuss and like watch an interview with her. She's amazing
I
because
will.
she talks about that respect that he brought. Like he was coming in a lot of ways and was like kind of like dictating certain things, but she would like bring her jazz sensibilities and all of her like
Yeah.
sort of studio musician prowess, as well as the rest of her collaborators, to the stew, and they would do something that was utterly and completely transformative and amazing, and the work is legendary as a
Oh, it
result
totally is.
of
The
that.
Wrecking Crew is amazing.
Right.
I mean, you've heard the Wrecking Crew, even if you don't know it. That's
Sure.
the kind
Yeah.
the kind of thing. And that reminds me too of something that that Duck Dunn of Booker T and the MGs, told Tom Petty's group once, whatever. He goes, guys, when has music that's performed by four people who really know what they're doing sound bad? It
Yeah.
just doesn't.
Yeah.
It sounds good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
why do you need all the other tricks? Like come in and do the magic.
And to tie all that back to what Lawrence is saying, I think that it's a very accurate articulation of some of the problem is that some people are being devalued, right? Some people are being
Yeah.
disrespected. Some people are being left out. Some people
Yep.
are being are oh, and again, I've seen it all ways. It's oh yeah,
Yeah.
design is just gonna like sort of make it look good. Or I've seen the oh, these are just the code monkeys who are just going to execute our beautiful vision. And it's like all of that stuff is disrespectful and dehumanizing and not creative and collaborative. And to get it right, and this is like so much of the work that as a consultant, whenever I work directly with teams, it's getting to that, here's four people in a room together making music together. And a
Yeah.
lot of people are like, oh God, like I didn't, they're like, what's this feeling? What's this?
Yeah,
What's this
totally.
feeling of like back and forth and like it's okay if we don't have it totally sorted out right out of the gate. Like
Yeah.
it's, geez, man.
Well, this also raises another like larger existential question of sorts too, which is there room for mistakes in our work?
Yeah.
Like, or is there room for unpredictability? I think that there is, and I mean, again, we can keep going back to music, right? You think about all the intentional mistakes that artists leave in their music that actually makes the music way cooler. Like the feedback from, is it If I Fell? No, it's not If I Fell. It's the Beatles song. One of the first recorded uses of feedback. And it
Yeah.
was all because they just threw the guitar on the amp.
Yeah.
Mistakenly,
Yeah.
or like Hey Jude, Paul cusses in there, like pretty clearly. If you know exactly where it is, you go, oh my gosh, like that was a hit single and it's never
Yeah.
been edited out, never. Like it's in there,
Yeah.
but that stuff, is what adds the character, like those are mistakes that you wouldn't have landed on otherwise, if you
Yep.
were in a highly controlled environment and we're
Yeah.
sanitizing every input into the process.
Yeah. And
So it's,
I
yeah,
do, yeah, I think that it's like, yeah, how do we get that? How do we reclaim that accidental feedback becoming
yeah,
the defining moment, the musical moment of the song? Make it like, how do we do that digitally? And again, I've not short on ideas, but I think like a lot of it just really requires a fundamental uh reevaluation of what this process looks like. And this is a process
yeah,
that by now we actually now have a couple generations of professionals who only know this process. And so that's why I kind of feel like this, I hope this doesn't feel like we're just these old men shaking our fists
curmudgeons.
at the cloud. Yeah, old man yells at cloud, but I think that it's really like whenever people, I was just asked this actually the other day by someone who I really like, a good friend, and was like, do you still like design systems? Like honestly, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm like, but if I'm honest, I don't like a lot of the apparatus, all of which we're talking about here, I
Yeah,
think, and it's like design systems ain't the problem. You
no,
know what I mean? Like
it's
design
the
systems ain't the
process.
problem. Yeah.
There's something else, and like something I've been, like a shower thought that I haven't really fully defined out yet is that I sort of wonder if, like, are people still rallying around the whole fail faster sort of a thing? Because that was like what everyone used to say back in the 2010s and stuff, whatever. Is like, just fail faster. You learn from your mistakes. You can iterate. Nothing on the web, is like totally fixed in stone. It's ones and
Yeah.
zeros. You can make changes. Like that's the design thinking process, right? You learn,
Yep.
you iterate, and you throw in,
Yep.
and it never stops. It's a
Yep.
continuous cycle. And it was like put something out there that should optimize things and make things better. If it sticks, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And that's how
And
Amazon would like
pixels,
would like roll
pixels
out.
are cheap. Pixels
Yeah,
are cheap. You could iterate over this stuff. So unlike recorded music, like we've been sort of
yeah,
talking about, where it's like, oh, eventually that stuff gets put onto wax and like sets out into the world, and that's a final product, or there's a
yeah,
final manuscript of a book or a final movie. And so there's like a lot more on the line. Like these things are like living and breathing digital things. If you could push it out and then, yeah, that didn't work, push out like a fix to it the following day, and you could do that infinitely. Like you could do that as many times as you want. But if you didn't know any better, if you duck your head into like any team doing like work right now,
you
you
think no
you would
way.
think that you know like the sky is going to fall if we screw this up, if like we
Yes.
hit like the launch button on this stuff. So there's a real there's a real fascinating opportunity. It requires, I think, like kind of holding this stuff up to the light. So I'm glad that we were able to pick at this a little bit, because I do think
Yeah.
that, again, sort of bringing it all back to, I think the spirit of the show is like this, the human experience of doing this kind of work, and the good, the bad, the ugly that kind of comes with it. And I do think that this kind of stuff falls into the bad and the ugly
The ugly
part
for sure.
of this field right now. And that's what, contributes, at least in part, to, I think, a lot of people having these real soul searching moments of going like, I thought that I was like doing fun stuff. Like I thought I was like designing things and like making things
Yeah.
to like help people and building cool stuff. And
Well,
it it it
yeah.
it's kind of there. But at the same time, like, even if it's like a good, it could definitely become great. But
Mhm.
for a lot of people, I think it's kind of like actively bad. And like Lawrence was saying, like this very like disrespectful dynamic. And so it's like in those cases, it's like you got to cross over the threshold
Yeah.
from bad to at least getting something that feels generally good.
Well, it used to be you could fire up a web browser and anyone was invited to go hack on that. Like, hey, if it, like, here's a CSS box, go have fun with it. You can do this, on your own. You don't need permission to do this. But these days, it's a lot more complicated. There's a lot more
Yep.
barriers to entry for this stuff. You have to know certain frameworks, you have to know certain types of like best practices, you have to be familiar with multiple types of languages or abstractions,
Yep.
and you have to get into this like nitty gritty of things. And before you know it, you're away from the core
Yep.
technology, right? Of like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And before you know it, you feel like you need an advanced degree just to get in.
Yeah.
There isn't that magic of like, oh, background green. Whoa, that was
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Well, and that's it. So we've been working with, we have a great apprentice that's been working with us for the last couple months.
Oh,
And
you hired the person.
yeah, we did. And it's been fantastic. But we've been sort of helping her get more comfortable with this idea of kind of like making a mess, which, again, like
Yeah.
there's this like weird irony here where it's like, okay, I've devoted the last, 12 years of my life to this idea of design systems and stuff, and I care a lot about, creating really high quality, you know, websites and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But like the actual act of like arriving at that, just in the same way, back to music and stuff, is like
Yeah.
you need to have the jam session, you need to like play, you need to do all of that stuff. That's ostensibly, I guess, what like that
Yeah.
first diamond in the double diamond design process is supposed to be. And then we were like, cool, okay, we banged this into shape, we got it into
Yeah.
like the rough shape that we want, right? Here it is. And we did
Yeah.
all of this like in CSS and HTML and stuff, and like, here's, okay, cool, we've arrived at like where that feels good. And then it's like we cross this threshold where it's like, now it's time to tighten it up, we'll componentize the things and stuff. But if you, like you
Yeah.
were just saying, it's like if you inject all of these, you know, frameworks and formalities, and even in the Figma world, it's like, oh God, like,
Yeah.
when do I create the tokens? Like
Right.
in order to do this, I first need to set up like this, like very sophisticated token system. And all of that, just to coming back to kicking off this conversation, is like
Yeah.
gets you out of that flow, like gets you
Flow.
out of the creative act into something that's a lot more like mechanical, and you're like sweating
Yep.
these like weird details. And so
Configuration.
yeah, the dynamic, or the thing that we need to kind of reclaim and reestablish in our work, is that messy creative stew that is freer, is less limited, is less like, how is this actually going to be implemented or
Yeah.
whatever. you got to start with the ideas. You got to start with like the actual inspired creative act, and then you, eventually to get it over the finish line, sure,
Yeah.
you got to tighten things up. You got to do it like anybody that does like mastering. Like that's what I started my
Oh
university
God, what a
career doing
fun task.
is like mixing and mastering. Like those people have like
So much fun.
so much patience, so much attention to detail, and
Frustrating.
that's a lot different than Keith Richards. Keith Richards isn't mastering the Rolling Stones, you know, so kind of it takes all kinds, but there's like these different phases of a creative project. And I feel like the digital world at least has really just kind of way over dialed on the we're going to do it and we need to do it right and it needs to be enterprise grade, it needs to be at scale, it needs to be whatever. All of those things are good and that's what we want to shoot for, and I've participated in all of those efforts.
Totally.
But there's like this whole first part that we don't need to lobotomize in order to also do that other stuff.
Yeah, as you know, I was going to ask you at first, hey, is like, do you ever feel a conflict when, like, your focus is on creating systems, and systems are meant to like add predictability and to, kind of, make things a little less messy in a sense because you have a codified sort of documentation for
Yeah.
how things work.
Yeah.
But the more you talk about it, I'm like, no, I totally get that. Isn't really a conflict. Like that is
Nope.
the recording process. That's
Yep.
what it is. You are all in the same room. You can let the sound bleed in between people. It's like it, you kind of think like, well, the song yesterday didn't just come out, like the way it did.
Right.
Like like it had to go through like this like germ of an idea, and then it had to be expanded upon, and then it had to be messed up, a few times. And then finally, you come up with this what sounds so simple and like obvious, but it wasn't when it first
Right.
came. So I sort of wonder, like shouldn't design systems have that same sort of like magic where it's like it's almost like you're writing a melody, and melodies you might pick the wrong notes at first.
Yeah, no, exactly. But like why these things aren't in conflict, and I'm just gonna like I'll just like so here's a website right here, just drew it, right? So there's a header box and it's got a box for the logo, it's got a box for the let's see if I could zoom out a little bit. Some primary nav, right? Search box, a heading.
It's not the holy grail though.
A couple form fields and a couple buttons at the bottom of it and some sort of like sidebar thing, right? So it's like I could build that, and by using the design system's ingredients, that thing could get done very, very quickly. So we could spend our time just riffing on napkin sketches, right? And doing like the fun kind of creative work without having to then get paralyzed by the, oh, well, how we got to like build all of this stuff from the ground up and it's going to be time consuming. So it's like, so when you see those things as kind of like design systems become the ingredients or the materials that allow you to free up your headspace, to free up your team's headspace, to actually spend more time in the jam session.
That's really
and
cool.
that like
I love that analogy.
it's really like that's why the whole like design systems kill creativity is just like, God, give me a freaking break. But like it's define creativity, right? Define like what it is we're doing. And I think that like so many people have like such like a narrow
view,
lens of like what constitutes, creativity or design or whatever. And so like design systems are part of the solution, believe it or not, to become more expressive, to become more expansive, to become more collaborative and all of that stuff. And there's a beautiful, beautiful thing like that. You can make a mess in this just big messy or sketchy sort of environment, and then when you translate that into the more rigorous at scale enterprise grade sort of part of the process, you have a lot of the ingredients in place that can allow you to do that and actually like take this mess and into something that is real and solid and durable.
Yeah. some of this too just reminds me like how much does music have this right in terms of like a working creative process, in terms of like you can have an environment where you're encouraged to experiment and to try things, and that would be like the studio. And it's like some people used to treat the studio as, this is your time to shine. You come in, you play your part, you play it flawlessly, and
Yeah.
then you professionally leave. It's like,
Well,
okay, I did
it
it.
costs money, right? Like it costs
Exactly.
money. There's a constraint there, right? So you gotta roll up knowing what the hell you're doing.
Yeah. And then the technology gets better. And you can say, oh, well, now we can be messy because we can do things faster. We can do, automated double tracking. We can do,
Yep.
Verispeed to change keys. We can do all this stuff.
Yep.
And, but as technology gets more complicated for us, it seems like it's taking that stuff out. It's not encouraging us to experiment. It's actually like conforming us into patterns and into prescriptions.
Now seems like a good time to invoke AI into this whole equation, because like
Yeah.
like design systems and a lot of like, again, this kind of like, we'll say false binary about, oh, here's the stuff, it's going to take our jobs and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, like I think that that's like a real valid concern, especially given the definition, this very like lackluster definition of, I feel like, what we've been talking about in our conversation so far,
Yeah.
which is designers do this thing, developers do this thing, and then that sets up this kind of apples to apples kind of comparison, where it's like, well, the AI could technically do that,
Technically.
and so now all of a sudden there's like this tension. But like design systems being a material or a tool or whatever to help facilitate this creative process, holy shit, we now have this ability to go, make me a website that articulates the many differences and similarities between music and web design and development. And somebody
Yeah.
could go fire that off right this second. And then we could spend the rest of our time together iterating over that. And then
Yep.
eventually we could go and build it for real, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
there's this there's this understanding that when you think about things as merely tools, and you as a human being, that we've evolved for millennia to wield tools, invent
Yeah.
tools, improve tools to our benefit. And when we think about it like that, which has been the case for the entirety of humanity, any new paradigm, any new crop or generation of tools becomes additional creative materials for us to wield.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean I'm not here to say it's amazing. I'm not here to say that these tools are going to save the world or ruin the world. And it's all a little bit of both. And we have to get comfortable like thinking in that way. But at the same time, like to really, I feel like so many of my conversations with people who are anxious about the AI, taking my job kind of conversation, which
We see that a lot.
which we've discussed, yeah, already on the show. It's getting out of that false binary, that false, like it's this versus this. It's like, you're a human being. Human beings evolved to use tools. AI is a tool. How might you use these tools to do your work and to
I,
make good things? That's a good
uh,
question to explore. Again, that's not, do you have to do that? Nope.
yeah.
But
You
these
might
things
have
are now
just
available. Yeah.
you might have just tangentially answered Lawrence's cool question here, where he says, or asks, design systems have replaced napkins, boards, wireframes. No, we talked about this stuff. Um, Product owners want to see stuff now. So tying this to music, what do companies want to hear? A high school band or the New York Philharmonic? And that's a good question. I mean, honestly, it's a question of fidelity, right?
Yes.
At the end of the
Yep.
day. And I know you have lots of thoughts on that. So I just want to, unleash
No,
you.
it's great. I think that is really good. But like, yeah, like with like the AI example, right? If we were to just say, make a website that does this, you get this very immediate and very low fidelity sort of thing, right? Like, can you trust this thing? Is
May
this thing
contain
rock
errors.
solid? Is it whatever? Like, no, but it gives you something to look at
Work
and
off.
reflect on. And like, that really is one of the biggest superpowers of these things, is that it's just like, yes, I now have a crappy first draft to edit and to do, versus like the blank page. But yeah, the question of fidelity is really important here. And that's where I think that like our job as professionals is to be more like that New York Philharmonic, which is like, we are experts, we are trained, we have a real touch, and we understand what quality is, and we know how to deliver it, right? And so, can these tools help us along the way, even in the latter part of the process? Yeah, actually, like it can, hey, QA my work, like, what am I missing here? Like, asking it, just to do sort of crazy checking kind of
Gut
stuff.
check. Yeah.
Really, really good stuff. But I do think that there's, when it's not presented properly, or when it's like, it's so much of like the narrative is just totally just like actively harmful, that again, that like false binary, and it's like, oh, look at this thing, it can make the website in 10 seconds, therefore we don't need these people
it's
to do this
deceptive
work anymore.
marketing, really what it comes down to, how it's
Yeah.
being positioned to us, in our professional work. And
Yep.
that's a shame, right? Because like, no, you're going to use this or you're going to get left behind. And suddenly we're like, that like triggers a lot of people's different
Yes.
emotions, right? Like, am I wanted anymore? Am I loved? Am I successful? Am I,
Yeah.
like whatever your primary question is, it just got attacked.
Yeah.
And
No, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Especially when the businesses act on it. I think that's like where like it crosses over the, oh, this is just like a sentiment, or this is just like marketing stuff. It's like, no, like when you actually have the companies going, we could hire these 5,000 people back, or we could like figure out the ways to like kind of do this more efficiently without them. And that's real. That's real loss and stuff. But I think like the opportunity here is to make yourself indispensable by simply being you, being a human being, exercising your judgment, your critical thinking. I am a creative person who wields tools to make good stuff happen. AI is a tool, and I am curious about it. I'm also skeptical about it. And because I have good judgment and critical thinking skills and problem solving skills, I'm going to know when to deploy this stuff, when to hold back on it, when it needs a real like kind of human touch, when to realize its opportunities and its constraints, right? And to sort of like put yourself into a position where you're a person who's using a tool, and that's a very good place to be, because that puts you, there's many things that these things can do. Like I could ask AI to like list off every ISBN number that was published in 2023, and it would do that. And I can't do that. But at the same time, like, it gets these really basic things horribly wrong. So it's like, it's kind of like, it's knowing what's the thing you can do to put yourself in the right place, which is superior to these tools. You want to get out of this false binary that it's like this versus this. I do this for my job, and oh God, here comes AI and it can also do this. You need to get out, reestablish the appropriate hierarchy, which is, you are the human, you are in control. Here are these tools that you can wield, and you could use those tools to make great things, but you also need to exercise your humanity and your judgment and critical thinking to make stuff happen.
Let me do what I'm really great at, which is bashing metaphors down, like smashing them into the freaking ground. Like, to me, AI feels like someone created or like invented an instrument, and they're like, hey, play this instrument. But we're like, what kind of instrument is it? What does it do? Like, is it a woodwind? Is it a string? Is it brass? Like, what kind of timbre is it? Like what family is this a part of? They're like, you figure it out.
Yeah.
You know, like it does. It's magical though. It'll make all the greatest sounds. And like, okay, but what sounds? And so here we are trying to figure it out ourselves, as opposed to being told like, this is what it's used for. This is what it's really great to do. And of course you could go outside of those parameters, but it's never been defined in the first place.
It's a general technology for one, which is hard in general. And that's, I think, like why we've seen this at this point now years long struggle to kind of like figure out how to get our hands around it. And that's true for many other general technologies, the internet being one, steam power being another, and so on and so forth.
The Pebble watch.
Yeah. Like there's but
Zune.
I really love bringing it back to what you're saying. It's like, here's this thing and it doesn't belong to a certain instrument class. The immediate thing that comes to mind is freaking synthesizers and synthesis. Like you all of a sudden in like the late the 70s, late 60s, early 70s, you all of a sudden have, here is synthesis, and you could actually create and synthesize a waveform that sounds like a snare drum, and a waveform that sounds like a bass drum, and a waveform that sounds like a flute and a piccolo and a violin and a viola. And understandably, a lot of people freaked out about that. Drum machines are gonna like put drummers out of work and stuff like that. Back to doing dishes. I was doing dishes and listening to Phil Collins. And
dude, you're a brave guy.
Phil Collins crossed the line for me. Like, I used to not like him. I used to then ironically like him. And now I genuinely love Phil Collins. But like,
I get that.
In the Air Tonight, of course, was like the first song that kind of came up. And that is all drum machine for the first like 2/3 of the song. And then in comes one of the most iconic drum fills of all time. And what I love about that is I'm like, here's the song that is absolutely iconic. And a drummer, and a legendary one at that, is using this drum machine to sort of like set this mood and just this like, and it's just like this like little like pattern that's just like sort of serving as this light kind of textural kind of thing. And then he just comes in and it just like gets huge. And what I love about that is like, here's a professional drummer that knows what he's doing, that wasn't threatened by this invention of synthesis and drum machines, and in fact use it as a creative material to make one of, I think, probably his most well-known song, right? So that's a pretty good Phil Collins is doing the thing that we've been talking about.
Phil Collins.
So basically, we all need to be Phil Collins.
We all need to be Phil Collins, and we need to be Keith Richards. No, don't do that. Like, I think that there's something really poignant to that, you know, in terms of like, well, what is this instrument? You know, like can you embrace it and use it, you know, with restraint too? Like, like when you were talking about Phil Collins and like, he used a drum machine to add this like texture. Well, I'm working on a recorded track right now where it's like, I don't want to do like digital drum loops and stuff. Like I just don't, I'm just one of those people, you know, but I don't have a drum set, you know, so that kind of sucks. I do have a cajon though, you know, and what can I do with that? I can get the basic, you know, rhythm in there. And then what can I do with that? I can add little cymbal tracks that are tastefully placed in certain spots to add just that little bit of like percussion texture in there. And it's not taking over my site whatsoever. It's just accentuating the, you know, the real stuff that's there. And it's actually making the real, you know, percussion in there sound even better, because otherwise it would just kind of sound like a room recording of something, you know? It's actually tricks the ear a bit,
Yeah.
in a
So
tasteful
rather
way.
than just using like the can thing out of the box, it's like you're doing something unique without you're splitting the difference here,
Yeah,
right? And I
exactly.
think that there's so many corollaries with like how this field works and kind of back to again the sort of like creative stew that we've been kind of talking about so far is like full page comps, for instance, in Figma, and
Mm,
oh, we need like the desktop version, the tablet version, and the mobile version, and everything
I
needs
miss
to
those
be
days.
perfectly articulated, and the header and the footer needs to be present in all of them. Meanwhile, like the point of discussion is that the hero area. And
Yeah.
it's like that's really the only thing that you need. Or same thing on the technical end with like things like React or like a lot of interactivity. It's like you just have like a regular ass web page and then like oh but there's like this one sophisticated part so it's like it's
Yeah.
these things don't need to be like these all or nothing type situations, right? These are all tools, these are all
Yeah.
materials, and you're able to like mix and match things and use them to your advantage, right? Like again,
Yeah.
we're tool making, tool wielding creatures. And I feel like for whatever reason, like the last 10 years of our field has like way over dialed on
Yeah.
the like, oh yeah, this tool is good, therefore we must do everything in it. Or this we kind of got some predictable results out of it, and this is like the best practice, and we need to,
Oh yeah.
just do this from now on. Yes.
That uh like just makes me think of like Alex Russell's stuff, right? He talks about the lost decade of like JavaScript, and all this here. I'll just go ahead and link it up here. This like post, towards reckoning, which I love that
He's
word
always
because
got a good salty tone to him.
I know I'm always so
He's a good
jealous.
fire and brimstone guy. I love him.
Totally is, man. I love his like tone. I love his like voice, whatever, like because it's him, like you're just like sitting down and like chatting with him, when you're reading
Yeah.
this and you're like, okay, this is who he is, but I love the word reckoning in this because it forces you to reflect backwards, and say like, okay, now what do we do with this
Yeah.
context, like it's an active word, right?
Yep. Yeah.
It's not just, oh, I'm gonna go ruminate and reflect. No, I'm gonna reckon with this and I'm gonna make it right. But it's true, like we reduced ourselves down to prescriptions and abstractions and things that would make the developer experience better or more predictable or easier or more efficient or streamlined or whatever the business value is, whatever the, like, is it because you're trying to drop costs? Is you just want to ship more? Is it
Yeah.
just because you want to look as cool as like Amazon or something or Facebook? Cool, but at the same time, like
It's
that was a lot of baggage that we created just to solve problems. I mean, and again, we're creating more tools, but do we need the tools at the moment?
yeah.
It kind of seems like, oh, if someone makes a tool, we're kind of obligated to go try that tool, right? No, not necessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
but it isn't. It is
there's
an
there's a
interesting
lot
thing.
here that you could kind of like
Yeah,
lay over, I feel like just the human experience in general. And
yeah,
I've had a couple of these conversations recently, which is like the whole idea of like, I really love what you're saying of like, what do we do with it? Right. Where it's
yeah,
just like, yes, the trajectory has happened. Certain things have happened. You know, political situations happen, technology shifts happen, paradigm shifts happen, right?
yeah.
The world changes, and in a lot of ways we don't have control over that.
None.
You were raised in a certain environment, probably endured your fair share of hardships. Those things
Mhm.
happened. That's all true. It's all valid. It's all true. It's your lived experience. What are you going to do with it? Right. And that's
Yeah,
the thing that I think like is something that I see a lot of people suffer from in general, whether they're talking about professional things or whether they're talking about like kind of like, you know, personal life is like, yeah, you've had these layoffs or you've had these hardships or you've had these traumas
yeah,
and you've had all of this stuff. It's a really important and delicate thing to help communicate to people is like that stuff is real, that
yeah,
stuff is important, that stuff is valid, no one is trying to diminish, or no one should diminish it. Like a lot of
Yeah.
people do. Get over it. Like what are you harping? No, that stuff is
It's the
real.
future.
That stuff is a part of who you are, right?
Yeah.
And yet, here you are in the present moment, wherever you happen to be in that period of time, wherever life took you, or like whatever room you're in, like everything like led you to this moment. And you can decide if you're going to be sort of like backwards looking, and we could sort of, I think it's important to feel sorry for yourself. I think it's important to sort of like give yourself that kind of like compassion, but
It's real.
it comes, there's this threshold that gets crossed where it's like it overstays its welcome, or it kind of bleeds into not like a healthy, like, oh wow, like that was like some hard stuff that I went through, and into stuff like, guilt, shame, and the rest of it. And so it's like, it's a really hard balance to get right, is to sort of like validate your past experience, but also to say, here you are now, and how are you going to actually like sort of like use this stuff, right? Meet the present where it is. And you are not a prisoner of your past, right? Like mom or dad's shitty behavior, or any sort of like hardship that you went through, that sucks, and it's whatever, but you're here and you're aware of it, and you have agency, and you have the opportunity to kind of like use your past to inform your future. And I think that the more we're able to do that, the more successful we'll be at just kind of like navigating life, because it gets us out of that just kind of like carrying that weight, or letting stuff that's happened in our past like kind of hold us back.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. You got it's not necessarily, or you talked about this crossing of a threshold.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, like, to me, that crossing of a threshold is a trigger, right? Like like where something becomes a concept to something that becomes personal in a way.
Yeah.
And you got to remember, like, what is the fear that's driving this? Because usually it's going to be a fear and anxiety, and that is a trigger. And it's like,
Yeah.
it might be the ethical use of like, or that like plagiarism of other people's work. It might be the
Yep.
environmental cost of this stuff. It could be the psychiatry, how that field is being influenced. It could be an it could be you are afraid of being replaced or whatever.
Yep.
But there's going to be a personal reason, or several reasons even, that are
Yes.
triggering you. And I think that many of us haven't really spent the time to figure out, like, what kind of primal threat is this,
Yeah.
is this presenting me? Because then you could start to like tackle it from like that area. And for me personally, I'll be honest, like with AI, I'm afraid I'm not going to be wanted and
Mm-hmm.
anymore. Like I'm going to be replaced. I'm not needed. I'm not valuable. And that's going to have a lot of implications on things like being successful, being loved, like,
Yep.
and it cascades into other things. And that's, me understanding, like, why is this triggering me, and what, pain centers is this really hurting? So then that way I can be like, okay, am I really afraid of being replaced? Okay, if so, well, how am I going to be replaced? And like, does
Yeah.
it necessarily mean I'm going to be replaced? Because you don't know that that's the question that you're answering deep down, but once you do realize that that's the question, you can say, no, I don't need to be replaced with this. How do you use that tool accordingly?
Yep.
Or how do you respond to it, or behave around it? Because we could just spiral out and be anxious and be fear-based around this
Yep.
stuff, or we could try to evolve, in some way with it, or like figure out a measured, intentional response to how we create barriers around it and protect ourselves, to make us feel safe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a, personal, individual type thing, but yet we all, have some sort of universal impact from it.
Yeah.
It's so interesting.
But I think you're onto something, in that it's like the more you know yourself and understand, yeah, like what your triggers are, like what, just really understanding the whole terrain of your inner world. Oh, I have these tendencies. Oh, I have these triggers. Oh, I also have these strengths and these talents and
These are
abilities.
my values. Yeah.
Right. You're able to sort of navigate whatever the present moment is without just getting just sloshed around in the fast moving current, right? So it's like I think that that's like the kind of thing that it's like, yeah, we have all of these like kind of environmental threats, whether it's like AI or yeah, all sorts of like real life stuff. And the more you're able to sort of like stand comfortably on your own 2 feet, the more resilient you're going to be, and the more that all of like the winds can be blowing and stuff around you, and and you can kind of withstand it. And I think that that's why this work of like really kind of getting down to bedrock and knowing yourself, being honest with yourself, being willing to sort of like face the scary stuff kind of head on, and to do that work, it allows you to get on the other side of it. So then you're able to sort of like show up as your actual, like your full self,
Yeah.
warts and all, right? And
Yeah.
triggers and sensitivities and all. And you're able to sort of like meet the moment with like a better sense of awareness, that otherwise you're just going to continue to get yanked around,
Yeah.
because there's no shortage of people on LinkedIn breathlessly saying, you got to be doing this. If you're not doing this, you're falling behind, and this stuff's going to like eat you up. And as you're sort of describing your real fear around this stuff, I was like, kind of reflecting on myself, and I'm like, oh, like, yeah, I mean, I guess if I like really like dug down deep enough, like I was definitely there. I feel like over like the last couple of years, we were doing more like kind of active AI work.
Yeah.
And once I kind of like cut that cord and was like kind of out on my own and kind of reclaimed a lot of like my own sense of self, I feel a lot like I'm able to like withstand that, and those fears. I don't want to say are totally gone,
Yeah.
but
No,
like
no, they're not.
if I'm speaking honestly, I feel like, yeah, like pretty sure that I'm going to be all right, because I've done a hell of a lot of work to like learn how to trust myself and my instincts and stuff. So it's like it's a really weird place to be, because I think like, and that's frankly I think like why the show exists is it's like a lot of people are subjected to this stuff. And I don't want to say that I'm like, oh, I'm just, I haven't figured it out. I haven't figured out. But I do think that there is like something there where it's just like, it's not about like, oh yeah, go learn the skill or go do this stuff. It's like, it's like really like we need to be able to better articulate our inner selves, explore those things, do that hard work. And that, believe it or not, is going to ultimately translate into what technologies you learn and all of that stuff. But it's like it's you got to go to bedrock.
Well, it's going back to the concept of reckoning, right? Like once you have the context of something and you're aware of it, and you can reflect on it and acknowledge it, you can say, okay, that's a sunk cost.
Yeah.
Like for me, again, going back to the wanting to be wanted thing, that's actually a long running pattern in my life, and something I'm only recently aware of, but back from like childhood stuff, back from like high school, whatever, college. And but when I start framing how I view about things like AI, or like less concrete stuff, stuff that doesn't sit right with me, but I can't quite articulate why, if I start to like view it through the lens of being wanted, it becomes a lot more crystal clear. And I go, oh, I am afraid of that. Yep, that does sound right. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what do I do with this? Because really, when I think about the concept of AI, my brain automatically asks, "Am I wanted?" And it says, "Maybe, no, maybe, no, I don't know. Maybe we'll find out." And I don't like that answer. I want yes. And because of that, and if I'm not getting a yes, I'm going to scramble. I'm going to start ruminating. I'm going to spiral, right? But if I can, get affirmation in that space too by looking at other areas and not asking, am I wanted, but saying I am wanted. Like I can look in certain places and be like, well, I'm wanted here, 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 and here.
Yep.
I don't need to be wanted everywhere, like that's okay. But how do you respond to this thing and rationally suss it out with what reality is versus what your triggers are? That to me is like the secret sauce.
That's amazing. It's an amazing display of, I feel like, emotional maturity. It's like you're able to like, so I think that there's like a lot there. And again, this sort of like gets at that dynamic of like what I was kind of saying earlier is like a very like difficult concept to articulate without sounding like you're diminishing or invalidating someone's experience.
Yeah.
What you just described, it's not to say, oh, I'm no longer afraid.
No.
Right? The fear happens. Like that's reptile brain shit right there.
The fear's
like that's,
there. Yep.
You're not going to get around that. And
Nope.
that just happens to us. And I think you did a great job at describing. It's like you've done a lot of work to have now an awareness about why that trigger's getting hit.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make it go away. It doesn't mean that it isn't valid anymore or anything like that. But what it does do is allow you to then sort of wield it and do something useful with it and
It's
to
a power
examine it.
at that point,
Yeah.
right? It becomes an advantage if you want to use it in that way, or it just becomes a way of knowing yourself better, and that's just as valuable as anything else. Like when we're introduced with such weird, unknown territories of things like, what does AI mean for my job? What does it mean? I mean, you could put this into anything. You could put it in diversity and front end developer conferences. You can do it.
Yep.
You can talk about accessibility. You can talk about all kinds of things with this, but
Yep.
it all comes down to like, what is really rubbing you the wrong way? Because it's really pointing back to something, primal in you, that like is part of that lizard brain, and you need to call out that lizard brain and say like, what are the heuristics that are driving this?
Yeah. And I think that like what we tend to see is a lot of kind of outward pointing things of it's like rather than the self-reflection and understanding that it's like, oh, this is actually a me thing, but I'm kind of like making it like a everyone else is wrong or these other people like don't care about this and like we're all screwed and everybody sucks and whatever. It's like a lot of it is like, yeah, it's that's the reaction instead of like pointing inward, which is again like scary to confront.
It is scary.
That stuff.
It's a lot of work too. That's
Yes.
also part of it. That's why we develop heuristics, right? They're shortcuts for us to not have to do the hard work every time, but we establish patterns and we can get into rhythms and routines on things.
Yep.
But if we just lean into those all the time, well, you become hardwired into something, and you might be hardwired with some bad patterns and behaviors.
Yeah. But it's like I was talking with someone recently about, and they're looking for a job, and it was kind of like that. Here's the job market. And again, this is all real. Like real. Once again, doing this like nuanced stance, like that fear is real. The job market is real. Like the reality is there, and this is a challenging reality. But it's like, and it's possible to understand that reality without necessarily going like, here's like, I'm just going to like blame it on
AI,
that, this stuff or AI or whatever. And like, oh, and here's these other people that are like over here doing this or saying this or, these people. And it's just like, you could just tell it's like this, like, I'm willing and able to talk about anything and everything aside from my own like kind of problems that are ultimately manifesting in this very kind of like finger pointing kind of
totally
way,
your natural response to something is just an amplified like reflection of what you're feeling inside. There's something in there that's really driving that, and if you want to understand it more, you got to look the other direction. That's the hard part.
Yeah. And kind of coming back to that, like kind of like knowing yourself and doing that hard work allows you to get to a place where you don't feel as maybe defensive, or you need to be kind of, pointing fingers and, throwing little verbal hand grenades out
Yeah.
into the world. It ultimately leads to just like a healthier, I think, way of being, because you understand your threat response, and you're able to sort of like sit with it and just like, again, ultimately like feel comfortable that I'm a person. I understand why I'm feeling threatened by this thing, but ultimately, and that's not to say you don't say anything, but it can maybe be sort of said, like, stated as more of like a nuanced opinion versus like a, I'm against this, or this person sucks, or
Not
this
so
person's
absolutist,
ruining
right? It's
things.
more like,
Yeah.
this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm noticing.
Yep.
Like, how are you seeing and noticing this? Like that's interesting, right? Because then you get the other perspectives on it. And you can see what other people's triggers are on it, which is equally interesting. Um, yeah, that's such like, I feel like we could talk about this 3 more hours, like
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, just fully recognizing, I think that we missed the agenda, I think,
we
for today.
did.
Like we had some like really, really good questions to speak to.
Yeah.
I don't know, like I feel like what the conversation we ended up having indirectly, I think, sort of gets at this stuff. I think that it's okay if we did this. I think that it was the conversation apparently
Totally.
that needed to happen, and we'll have next month where we could kind
Totally.
of like get back into people's submissions and stuff like that, and would definitely encourage other people to submit and share your stuff, whether that's like a reflection on what we're talking about now, or you're wrestling with like a challenging situation at work, or you're job hunting and you're wrestling with that stuff around like the purpose, or the rumination, or the anxiety, or the just like feeling bummed out about very legitimate things. This is the kind of stuff that we want to pick at. So if you're watching this or listening to this, the other episodes are maybe more, we'll say, representative, I guess, of
Opened
kind of
up.
like the normal the normal open up format. But I do think that like this is a healthy conversation. I think that it's like it definitely helps frame, I think, a lot of like the dynamics of a lot of the submissions that we've been getting, right? Because in a lot of these questions are the, what ifs, and the anxiety and stuff like on display. So I think it's good to be able to sort of pick at this
Yeah.
stuff.
It's not about the specific tools. It's not about the specific job descriptions. It's not about the specific, deals. It's how these things make us feel and how we approach them as humans.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be clean all the time. And yeah, that's what I really like about this. I mean, this show will be messy too.
Well, that's
that's
just it.
fun.
And
Yeah.
to be like, I think that that's been like a really liberating thing that I've only now recently better appreciated, is the understanding that there really aren't a lot of hard rules in
That's an
anything. It's
interesting
like,
point.
yeah, we just had a conversation. We just, without talking about it, we just ended up kind of switching the format of the show, and we can decide to feel guilty about that, or whatever, or we could just be like, well, okay, it was a good outcome, so we could do
I
that.
thought so.
And then the same thing goes for, people who are, whether that's their job hunting or their whatever. It's like, I think like a lot of times it's just like, yes, like here are these, there's this and there's this, and I need to like fit into this mold. And I think that it's like, when you start going, well, what would it look like if I were to work part-time and, take care of my kids like when they're home from school for the other part? And like, what if I, pursued that one idea that I had, even if it doesn't necessarily like translate to immediate financial success and stability? Like,
Yeah.
what if you like stop putting those limits, or kind of putting these hard rules on top of things that are ultimately just kind of constructs, right? Like there's like a lot of ways to make 2 and 2 equal 4. There's a lot of
Yeah.
different ways
That's
to
why I
sort
like
of make these
CSS
things
a
work.
lot.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Uh,
that's a great example because it's like it's by its very nature a little like messier. It's like a little
you're
it-
going to
there's
cascade a bit, you know, you're going to
yeah,
inherit, you're going to have specificity battles. There's multiple ways of defining with the same color, you know,
that's
like you can
amazing,
create a side-by-side layout, you know, in multiple ways.
right?
Yeah, like who cares? Like what fits your mental model? What
Yeah,
works in this
yeah,
situation, right? Like there
yep,
isn't a prescription for that. There's just boundaries,
yep.
right?
Very,
And
very,
those,
very few
yeah,
things there are like objective right and wrongs. It's like there, I
yeah,
think, like are some when you zoom out and triangulate between a bunch of things, there's some like general best practices that I think that we could kind of take to heart. But it's like
totally.
once you start picking at this stuff, whether it's technology or jobs or life or whatever, it's like very, very, very few
But I
absolute
think
truths.
what you said there though earlier about getting to know yourself and your inner, you know, drive, you know, in terms of like what influences you, what affects you, what you're afraid of, you know, doing that hard inner reflective work. I think that, you know, if anyone listening to this, you know, gets one thing out of here, it's how to, you know, evaluate yourself next to the thing. You know, where
Yes.
do you sit next to it? How are you positioned to it? Because it's not going to be exactly like someone else, and that's going to tell you a whole lot about your actual feelings, your priorities, your values with that. And then you can properly suss that out and like respond to it in a healthy way.
Yeah.
That's to me. Oh, cool. What'd you just share there?
I had the opportunity uh now many years ago, close to 10 years ago, which is kind of wild. But I gave the commencement speech at my high school, which was
What?
yeah, it was pretty
No one's
wild.
called me to do that.
You gotta get it, gotta get on it.
They'll never
But yeah,
ask.
like what you were just saying, I think is really I think sort of maps really nicely and to kind of like the spirit of it, which is
Yeah.
really, and I think that we've even kind of talked about it in prior episodes, but it's like really like, yeah, that knowing yourself and like really understanding like why you enjoy doing the things you do, right? Why, like we've talked about on this episode, like why you get triggered by certain things, but really like understanding like the
Yeah.
why leads to this sense of better sort of self-understanding that allows you to persist irrespective of like the moment in time you're living in, right? Like the world's going to keep
Yeah.
changing. What you're going to do for work is
Yeah.
likely going to change throughout your career. Gone are the days where we're working 35 years and getting a
Hmm.
gold watch
Gold
upon
watch. Yeah.
retirement and stuff. So yeah, it's like it's really important to know yourself, like because like the what you're going to be doing is going to be changing all
Yeah.
the time. So it's like the what why do you like doing the things that you do? Why do you like CSS? And like you just did a great
Yes.
job at it. It's like, why is that? And
I can
like
be
maybe
messy with
there's a
it.
day that CSS isn't around anymore, and I hope that that's not the case. But
Oh,
at
that
the
would be
same
so
time,
sad.
it's like for you to basically go, oh, I am attracted to things that have these qualities, right? I like
Yeah.
solving puzzles, or I like things that are a little bit messy, a little bit, like not super rigid or like a 1 or a 0, but I like
Yeah.
kind of some fuzziness. And you could apply that, you could superimpose that onto anything,
Anything. Yeah.
anything.
You know, I'll put a punctuation on that thought because we've been focused on the fear part, and like acknowledging the fear and facing the fear. But your
Hmm.
fear also, is very informative because it shows you what you're passionate about too and what you're really good at. Because if your question, like mine, is like, am I needed? Am I wanted? Um, I tend to answer that question for other people, because I want to get that question myself. And so
Yeah.
my superpower, what I realize is, oh, I like making people feel included. I like, collaborating in the process. I like, recognizing the outsider because I feel different oftentimes. Like I don't fit in. And so with that, like you can actually get, a sense of like what your natural wiring is to how you behave around something. So if you don't feel included by something, you are probably really good at including other people. So that
Yeah.
might offer you a clue, as far as like how like you can respond or behave, or how you can scratch the itch that's really, driving your like fear.
Yeah. No, that's great. It's like, again, it's like, yeah, it's understanding it, and then you could do something useful with it,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
Especially to kind of counter. It's like, oh, I've experienced, there's a reason, and my wife going into the mental health
That's
field and
awesome.
stuff like that. There's a reason why a lot of people kind of come out who are, part of her cohort that she's about to graduate with. It's like certain people are going to be working with like certain populations or certain ages or in certain environments. And a lot of it's due to the fact that they themselves have a lot of familiarity with it, or they have kind of found, a lot of hardship in their own life or in and around those things, and are now doing the admirable work of like tackling it head on and helping other people with it. And it's like, boy, oh boy, like that's about as admirable as I feel like I
Yeah.
can be. It's like I was like super hurt by this, or I was like the victim of this thing, or I'm from this, population, or like this
You can
whatever.
live in that
And
forever.
then you're
Yeah.
like, and I'm gonna like dive headfirst into it and help people with it. It's beautiful.
You know, this is making me think of like focuses for future shows. Your wife Melissa, she's just about to graduate, right?
Hmm.
Is this a career change for her?
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm really curious to talk about second, third, fourth different careers, in
She's
terms of
she's
like,
got all of those.
I think that I think we should bring her on and talk about, what it looks like to be, realize that like you need to align with what you're passionate about, and that requires a contextual switch.
Yep.
Or if you've been, like disgruntled with a job, and you've realized, oh, this isn't the career for me, or maybe you've changed in some way, your priorities have changed, who knows,
Yeah.
like something changes, and then you have to make a decision to like drop what's familiar and start at the bottom rung. That's not what we're taught to do. We're taught to like be capitalists, right? We're supposed to be at the top of the ladder.
Yeah.
Like why are we going down the ladder? That to me is like a really fascinating topic. Especially around the human side of like the work that we're doing.
Yeah.
So I'd actually love to get
Yeah.
Melissa's
Yeah,
experience on that.
she can absolutely speak to that, as well as I feel like a lot of other things. And I think that's like, you know eh, for a lot of our questions, even like to be able
Yeah,
to sort of like help guide them. It's like she has her own experience, but is also
yeah.
like more equipped even than us to yeah. So especially, well, it's like we're kind of you know role playing or LARPing
Yeah.
mental health kind of professionals. But I do think that like kind of having people who are a lot like kind of closer to that world, or other people that have other perspectives and stuff. Like I think that's we talked about that from day one
Day
of the
one. Yeah.
show. So in the spirit of just kind of like, yep, we're doing it. I think that we're going to
Yeah.
be kind of like working some other people into the fold here
That's
to
gonna be
help
fun.
answer the questions, as well as kind of like get their own, kind of take in their own experience out of it. So
Yeah. And again, like not prescribed exactly to what web development design is, whatever, but what can we learn, like from outside disciplines, that maybe
yeah,
that we're blind to.
yep,
It's really
100%.
fascinating. I love this stuff. Thanks
Yeah,
for
it's
for
great.
for driving it, man.
Yeah, I did right back at you. It's really good. I feel really good about it. I think that these are important conversations to have. Certainly don't see them happening many other places, certainly not like in our neck of the woods. So yeah. So thanks everybody for coming along for the ride, even if you're you know, if you're listening to the show for the first time, thank you. And if you've listened to the other ones or want to, they're there, and we're going to have more. And they're now on, I believe, Spotify and Apple Podcasts as
They're
well,
everywhere
as on
now. We're
YouTube.
all
Yeah,
over the place, man.
there we
Look
go.
out.
So yeah, so this is good. It's yeah, we're iterating over it, and I love it. It's fantastic. So Thank you.
And you can always go to smashingconf.com to go, get tickets, the free tickets to like show up here, just so you have an invite and can add it to your calendar of that. But yeah, there's also lots of other smashing stuff too. We have, Meets AI is coming up. We have like Scott Hanselman coming up with that. Like that's
amazing.
I just learned like I'm going to be moderating that. I'm like, are you serious? Like I don't know if I can do that. Like that's,
yes,
I just want to listen to these people talk. I don't want to, actually be polluting, things. But yeah, Smashing does all kinds of events like this. They're not just the online magazine. They do all kinds of like interactive workshops and
physical workshops. So I'm going to be heading over to
that's right
to Freiburg to do some stuff as well. So yeah, I mean, many thanks to Smashing for everything that they do and stuff, and it's definitely like worth your while to support the cause, because they're unlocking, I feel like, so much of the healthier parts of our industry, and continue to do that. And it's tirelessly done that like for as long as I got my LinkedIn message of 20 years. That Smashing's been around that whole time, so worth your support.
Stubbornly human.
I love it.
Sorry, Vitaly.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. All right. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. All right. Bye.